I remember that year like it's a dark fog that just won't lift. When I first met him, it was different. I thought maybe I'd finally found someone who saw me, who cared. But pretty quickly, things started twisting into something I never expected. It wasn't just little fights or disagreements. The way he talked to me, it chipped away at me. At first, it was these sharp words like knives disguised as jokes. "You're so useless," he'd say. "No one else would put up with you." I brushed it off, thinking he didn't mean it. But those words sunk in deep, eroding my sense of self bit by bit. Then came the manipulation. I didn't even realize it was happening at first. He would twist things around until I was the one apologizing even when I did nothing wrong. It was like living in a funhouse mirror, where reality kept bending in unsettling ways. And the worst part? The moments he pushed me to try drugs. I'd never touched anything before, but he'd say things like, "Everyone's doing it. You're boring if you say no." At first I resisted, but it became this constant pressure, making me feel like I wasn't enough unless I gave in a little. I remember one night when he pulled out a pipe, right there in the kitchen, and said, "Just try it once." I froze. I didn't want to disappoint him, but I also knew I was crossing some line I didn't want to cross. That moment, it made me realize how badly he was breaking me down. The infidelity was another blow. I found the messages, those cold texts on his phone, laughing about nights without me, plans made behind my back. At first, I wanted to believe it wasn't true, that it was some mistake or misunderstanding. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my chest. What hurt the most wasn't just the cheating. It was that he didn't care if I knew. Like it was a game to shame me, to remind me of my place. And then the physical violence. It started with shoves, which I tried to rationalize as accidents, or me being too sensitive. But then the slaps, the grabbing, the way he'd corner me until I couldn't breathe. I won't lie, it terrified me. I never thought I'd be one of those women with bruises hidden under long sleeves. But it happened. I remember one night after an argument. I don't even remember what it was about. He pushed me against the wall so hard my head hit the corner. I was stunned, tears streaming down my face, not sure if I was more scared or angry, but I couldn't fight back. Fighting back, I'd learned, made it worse. His control over me tightened like a noose. He decided where I went, who I talked to, even what I wore. If I dressed up or wore makeup, he'd say I was asking for attention. If I wanted to see my friends, he'd accuse me of cheating or not caring about him. Gradually, my world became smaller and smaller, until the only place I felt any kind of safety was inside my own mind, where I could pretend things were different. The breaking point came one late evening. I was packing a few things, trying to get ready quietly to leave while he slept. But he caught me. The rage in his eyes was terrifying, and without a word, he grabbed me, shouting that I was nothing without him, that I'd end up alone and miserable. I wasn't sure how I broke free, but I managed to run out the door, not daring to look back. I had nowhere to go, so I ended up at a women's shelter. The rooms there weren't fancy, but they were safe, warm, and quiet in a way that scared me at first. Sitting there that night, I felt this heavy mix of relief and fear. Relief that I was out, that maybe this nightmare was over. Fear of all that had happened, and what I might become because of it. But that was only the beginning. The scars weren't just on my skin, they were deep inside me. And though I was free, the echoes of those closed doors followed me, planting seeds of anger and pain that I wasn't ready to face yet. What I didn't realize then was that this anger, this fire burning inside, was going to push me down a path I never could have predicted. I never imagined I'd be the type of person to stoop to what I did. But 6 months after I walked away from him, something inside me snapped. It wasn't this sudden wild decision, it was more like a slow burn. Day after day, I remembered the times he pushed me down emotionally. The way he gaslit me into doubting my own reality. I guess deep down I wanted him to feel some kind of consequence for what he put me through. Not just the pain I carried in silence, but something tangible. Something that hit him where it hurt. One evening I found myself scrolling through local news online, half distracted, when an article caught my eye. Something about fraud, misuse of state funding, and penalties being handed down. The details made my stomach twist. It sounded too familiar, like the same story that could describe his double life. For months he'd been bragging about this side gig that supposedly paid well, but I always had this nagging feeling that what he said didn't add up. Then it hit me. At the time, he was still receiving state unemployment benefits, something he didn't have the right to if he was working or earning elsewhere. I wrestled internally for days. Reporting him felt like crossing a line, like becoming the person I despised. But every time I tried to rationalize backing down, I remembered the lies, the manipulation, the nights I spent crying alone. I thought, maybe this is the justice I can claim, something within my reach that doesn't rely on proving him wrong in endless arguments or waiting for karma to do its thing. So I did it. I contacted the authorities and gave them the information I knew. I wasn't eager to make a case out of our history. I just wanted the truth to come to light. Weeks passed with a dull ache in my chest, waiting to see if my actions would matter. And when I heard he was hit with a hefty financial penalty, one that would strain him in ways he never considered, it was like the scales tilted, even if just a little. But here's the thing, I wasn't free. Instead of relief, I felt a strange mix of victory and heaviness. There was this quiet, gnawing guilt, like I'd punched through a wall only to find an empty room on the other side. I kept asking myself if what I did was right, or just another way to feed the anger that still clung to me. Sometimes I caught myself replaying it, wondering if he'd even blinked at the penalty or if I just ended up hurting myself more than him. It was confusing to want justice but also feel unsettled by it. I realized that revenge, as satisfying as it might seem in the moment, didn't erase the scars he left, or the doubts, the second-guessing, the moments where I questioned who I'd become. I wasn't sure if my decision took me closer to peace or drifted me further into this tangled mess of emotions. What I did know was that burying those feelings wasn't working anymore. I needed to understand them, to unravel the mess that lingered long after the breakup. In the quiet that followed, I found myself reflecting deeply, not just on him or the punishment, but on the aftermath of abuse itself. How does someone move forward when the weight of what happened keeps pulling you back? How do you heal when your own sense of right and wrong feels blurred by pain, anger, and guilt? That's when things started to shift. The act of reckoning wasn't just about the penalty or him. It was about me, trying to find a way out of the chaos his shadow left behind. And it led me straight into the hardest part. Facing the psychological turmoil that comes after abuse, and finding a way to make peace with it all. I remember sitting alone in my tiny apartment one evening, the silence pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. The revenge I'd exacted against him, what I thought would bring closure, a sense of justice, it didn't feel like relief. Instead, there was this gnawing guilt eating away at my insides. I kept asking myself, why can't I just feel okay about this? I wanted to be free. I wanted to move on. But instead, I was trapped in this tangled mess of shame, anger, and confusion. It was like I was living inside this storm of emotions, each one pulling me in a different direction. On one hand, I knew what I did was a way to reclaim power he had stolen from me. But on the other, there was this voice inside, whispering that maybe I'd crossed a line. Was I becoming the person I hated? Was revenge really justice or just another form of pain? These questions haunted me late into the night. Eventually, I realized I couldn't wrestle with all this by myself. So I started looking for answers, books, online forums, support groups. That's when I stumbled across something that struck a chord. Battered woman syndrome. At first, I brushed it off, thinking my situation was different. But the more I read, the more it made sense. The feelings of guilt, the confusion, the lingering fear. They were all part of this invisible scar left behind by abuse. The syndrome explained why part of me felt stuck in that victim role, even though I was trying so hard to break free. I decided to reach out to a counselor who specialized in trauma and abuse recovery. Honestly, the first session was tough. I had a hard time opening up, worried about being judged or misunderstood. But step by step, she helped me peel back the layers, helping me see that my guilt wasn't some sign of weakness or failure. It was just part of the healing process. One of the most powerful things I learned was about self-forgiveness. It sounds so simple, but it was revolutionary for me to hear that forgiving myself didn't mean I was excusing what happened or erasing my feelings. It meant giving myself permission to heal, to accept that I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. That concept gave me a little breathing room inside a heart that had been so full of condemnation. There were moments when I thought maybe I was being too soft on myself, worried that letting go of guilt would make me forget the reasons I fought so hard. But my counselor helped me understand that justice and healing aren't the same things. Justice is about holding someone accountable, but healing is about freeing yourself from the past. And sometimes that freedom comes with making peace inside your own heart. I also started reconnecting with people I'd pushed away during those dark years. Friends who had always had my back. Family members who wanted to help but didn't know how. Their kindness chipped away at the isolation I had wrapped around myself like armor. Bit by bit, I was building a support system I'd never really allowed myself to have before. Through journaling, therapy, and these connections, I began to notice subtle shifts. Less anxiety, fewer nightmares, moments where I could laugh without guilt creeping in right after. I won't pretend it was a straight path. There were setbacks, moments when the past slammed into the present like a wave, threatening to pull me under. But each time I got a little stronger, a little more resilient. At times, I caught myself wondering if I'd ever truly escape this shadow of my past. Would the guilt ever fully disappear? Or was it something I'd carry with me forever? But I started to realize that healing isn't about erasing pain. It's about learning how to live alongside it, without letting it define me or control my future. Looking back, I can see that the revenge was just the beginning, raw and reactive. What I really needed was this deeper work, the slow reclaiming of my heart and mind. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fast. But it was necessary. And as I sat with all these feelings, I finally came to a quiet understanding. I deserved kindness from others and from myself. I could honor my pain without being shackled by it. This was the first step toward truly owning my story on my own terms. That realization didn't erase the past, but it planted the seed for something new. Hope. Not the kind that promises a perfect ending, but the kind that whispers there's a way forward. Toward healing, toward peace, toward a life where I'm not defined by what happened to me, but by how I choose to move beyond it. This was just the foundation, the first real chapter of a life rebuilt. And it set the stage for something even bigger. Reclaiming my strength and embracing a future where revenge no longer had the last word.